Chapter 43. Weeks passed. The rain finally gave way to crisp, biting air. Leaves had begun their slow transformation into gold and rust, crunching beneath boots on the gravel paths of Nevermore. Inside the ancient halls, a new kind of dread took root: midterms. Teachers were suddenly handing out essay prompts, research assignments, and group projects like candy from a broken piñata. Even the most indifferent students were forced to acknowledge the looming academic storm. Eden sprinted down the hallway, catching Wednesday just as she reached the classroom door. "Wednesday, wait. You have to tutor me for midterms," she said, breathless. "And help me with my essays and research. Please." Ajax popped up behind her. "Can you add me to that list too?" Wednesday turned slowly, her expression devoid of enthusiasm. "Help yourselves. I'm busy." She was halfway down the hall when Miss Thornhill stepped in front of her, smiling with far too much energy for a woman surrounded by hormonal teenagers. "Miss Addams," she said, voice syrupy. "If you're going to tutor Tyler for his midterms, you might as well help your classmates too." Wednesday stared at her. "Since when did it become my responsibility to care about my peers' academic survival? We'll pay you," Eden offered hopefully. Miss Thornhill folded her arms. "Either you tutor your classmates, or I'll ask Principal Weems to revoke your town privileges for the entire exam week." She leaned in slightly. "And you'll be glued to my side instead." Wednesday's voice dropped into a deadly whisper. "You know, most teachers offer to help their students themselves. But it seems you lack the confidence in your own ability to teach. At least have the decency to say it out loud, Miss Thornhill." Unfazed, Miss Thornhill clapped her hands. "Perfect. I'll get you a sign-up sheet." Wednesday blinked once. $10 per task. Plus a sign-up fee. $15 an hour. I will not be unpaid. Eden looked alarmed. "Wait, how about a sign-up fee and an hourly wage? Like a combo?" "No," Wednesday said flatly. Ajax frowned. "What do you mean by $10 per task?" Wednesday turned toward him. $10 to check each of your papers. Another $10 to tutor you per subject. Add the sign-up fee. Then I charge $15 an hour for my time." She raised an eyebrow. "That's $20 to $35 up front, depending on how needy you are." "That's daylight robbery," Ajax gasped. Eden squinted. "How much is Tyler paying you?" "We have a standing agreement." "So, basically, he's paying you nothing to do him?" Ajax flirted. Wednesday ignored him. Miss Thornhill chimed in, still smiling. "How about $5 per task and $5 per hour? Plus a $5 sign-up fee. That way, more students will want to join in." Wednesday didn't miss a beat. "Or, how about you tutor them?" "I'll go get you a black sign-up sheet," Miss Thornhill said cheerfully as she turned and walked away. Wednesday sighed and turned back to Eden. "Start saving." Principal Weems didn't expect to find herself in yet another debate over Wednesday Addams, but here she was, arms crossed, expression stern, as she stared at the sign-up sheet Miss Thornhill dropped on her desk. "You're hosting another tutoring session?" Weems asked, glancing over the list of names. "That's unexpected." "I came to complain about the rates," Thornhill said brightly. "Miss Addams is price gouging the students." "I never agreed to her rates," Wednesday cut in, her tone dry and sharp. "Your rates were too high, Miss Addams," Thornhill said. "I know," Wednesday sneered. That was the point, to deter them. Weems raised an eyebrow and picked up the list. "A $5 sign-up fee, $5 per task, and $5 per hour." Wednesday corrected her without hesitation. "My actual rate was $10 per task, 10 per subject, plus a sign-up fee and 15 an hour." She tilted her head slightly. "Unless, of course, the teachers wanted to tutor the students themselves." Miss Thornhill gave a huff. "She's tutoring Tyler for free." Weems looked up sharply. "You will use Miss Thornhill's rates, Miss Addams. Or your town privileges will be revoked for the duration of exam week." She leaned forward. "And I'll inform the Weathervane staff to call us immediately should you so much as step foot in the cafe." That did it. For a flicker of a moment, Wednesday looked genuinely cornered. Her daily espresso rituals and book-reading hours at the Weathervane were part of her personal routine, one of the few things she had carved out in this aesthetically offensive little town. She straightened her back and answered coolly, "Fine. I'll accept her peasant-friendly pricing on one condition." Weems blinked. "Which is?" $5 an hour per student. I choose the time of each tutoring session. No group sessions. No last-minute walk-ins. I set the schedule, and I don't negotiate. Weems looked to Thornhill, who gave a small shrug. "Agreed," Weems said at last. Wednesday took the sign-up sheet from the desk, stared at it like it was a war contract, then turned on her heel without another word. Inside the Weathervane, Wednesday sat at her usual booth, her quad cooling in front of her. She stirred it slowly, eyes locked on Tyler behind the counter. When he finally joined her, he slid into the seat across from her. "So Thornhill roped you into tutoring the whole school?" "I wouldn't say roped. More like blackmailed me with caffeine deprivation." Tyler smirked. "So does that mean I have to come over and study with your classmates again? Like last semester?" "No," Wednesday said firmly. "Too many students signed up. I can't fit them all into my dorm room without violating several fire codes. You'll have to be tutored separately after your shift." He nodded, considering. "I could clock out early. After you get your coffee, of course." "That'll give us 3 hours at most," Wednesday said, calculating. "Not enough. I'll deal with you the weekend before exams. That gives us an extra 48-hour head start." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Deal with me." She ignored him and took a sip of her coffee. "Have your essays and papers ready by then. We're getting ahead." Tyler leaned back with a grin. "You're really good at making tutoring sound like a crime scene cleanup." Wednesday's gaze slid over to the window. "Only because you don't know what I've seen in your handwriting." Students crowded around the bulletin board, their faces scrunching up as they stared at the new sign-up sheet. "Why is there a price now?" someone complained. Another muttered, "Wasn't this free last semester?" A third student piped up, "Apparently, Wednesday only agreed to tutor last semester because she needed credits for extracurriculars. This time, she's getting paid. $5 sign-up fee, $5 per task, and $5 an hour per student," one of them read aloud in disbelief. "That's the discounted rate," Yoko said dryly, sliding her sunglasses down her nose. "You should have seen her original pricing. It was daylight robbery." Miss Thornhill had to haggle her down. Grumbling filled the hallway. Despite the groans, the students who had survived Wednesday's brutal tutoring last semester were the first to put their names down. One even brought their own pen. The newer students, those who had transferred in or just joined that fall, looked hesitant. Their teachers had encouraged them to sign up, swearing it would greatly improve academic performance. They assumed they could just pay the sign-up fee and sit quietly through the sessions. Oh, how wrong they were. When Wednesday and Tyler arrived at the Galpin house that Friday afternoon, books in hand, Donovan gave them a long, tired look from the couch. "You're here to tutor, huh?" he said, eyes narrowing at Wednesday like she'd dragged in a storm cloud. "We're reviewing chemistry," she said coolly. "Uh-huh." He stood, crossed his arms, and gestured upstairs. "Leave the door open this time." Tyler groaned. "Dad, after what happened last time?" "Yeah, door open." Wednesday, unbothered, blinked once. "Don't worry. This is more urgent than exchanging bodily fluids." Donovan choked on his coffee. Tyler just rubbed his temples and muttered, "Thanks, Wednesday." She arched a brow. Honesty is the foundation of any academic partnership. They disappeared upstairs, the door staying very much open. Wednesday was quietly pleased. Tyler's essays were coherent, his reports structured, and he'd surprisingly retained most of his Spanish. All she had to do now was make sure he didn't forget the crucial material and teach him chemistry and calculus before midterms hit like a guillotine. Wednesday didn't begin tutoring until Monday night, well after dinner. She knew better than to start earlier. Nevermore's midterms weren't until Thursday and Friday. No point burning brain cells prematurely. She had secured the library for the week, knowing full well the quiet, echoing space would intimidate at least half her clientele into silence. When the students trickled in, the words "observe silence" glared from the blackboard in chalk like a final warning. She spotted several familiar faces, Nightshade Society members, Ajax, Eden, Xavier, Bianca, Yoko, scattered among the sea of anxious underclassmen. Some of them looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Too bad. Line up, she said, arms crossed and leaning against the heavy mahogany table like a grim receptionist. Name and your $5. There was some grumbling, but coins and folded bills were handed over all the same. She checked names against the list with all the warmth of a debt collector, casually crossing out anyone late or missing without comment. I don't care who you sit with, just don't talk unless it's to save a life, she said, sliding a stapler to the edge of the table. Use that if your report isn't stapled. $5 per paper. Drop them off here. Now. The students obeyed, slouched into chairs. Whispers died. Wednesday stacked the essays in a neat pile and pulled out her fountain pen. Group study while you wait. Don't bother me unless your appendix bursts. She began annotating, brutally, red ink dancing across the pages with the precision of a scalpel. When she was finished with each one, she called out names one by one and gave them their critiques, blunt and efficient. The library was silent save for the sound of pens scratching paper, occasional sighs, and Wednesday flipping pages like she was judging the last will and testament of the doomed. She stood behind the polished mahogany table, sorting through the papers while the group sat in hushed clusters. She called out the first name without looking up. Bianca. Bianca approached confidently. Her paper was returned to her with just a few precise annotations in red ink. Your thesis is stronger this time. Clear, assertive, and well-placed. However, Wednesday's tone dipped with clinical dissection. You slipped into passive voice in your third argument. It weakens your authority. Bianca frowned slightly. I thought passive voice made it sound more formal. Formal isn't the same as weak. Own your claims. Don't say it is believed that sirens are often used as metaphors for temptation. Say who believes it. Scholars? Critics? Yourself. She nodded, silently taking the note. Ajax. He looked more relaxed this semester, stepping up with his paper already open to her notes. You finally stopped writing like you're texting someone in a rush. Good. Ajax grinned. Thanks. However, Wednesday continued, your citations are inconsistent. You switched between APA and MLA halfway through. Pick a format and stay loyal. I used Grammarly. Wednesday looked at him with something close to pity. Grammarly can't save you from academic sloppiness. You're not writing a YouTube script. He accepted his paper without further comment. Yoko. Yoko stood and sauntered up, her annotated essay already tucked neatly into a black folder. You're close, Wednesday said. But you quoted the same critic twice to pad your word count. That's lazy. Diversify your sources. Yoko raised an eyebrow. I liked their interpretation. Then build on it. Don't just echo it. You're not a parrot. She tapped one note in the margin. Also, restructure your conclusion. Right now, it's a summary, not an argument. Leave the reader with something heavier than a recap. Eden. Eden stood, paper clutched tightly. You improved, Wednesday said. A rare concession. Your transitions are smoother. Your arguments are tighter. But, she handed back the paper, your second paragraph veers off topic. It reads like a tangent. I thought it gave context. Context is helpful. Irrelevant is not. Learn the difference. Then she added, more quietly, still, better than last time. Eden almost smiled. After returning the last annotated essay, Wednesday clapped her hands once, sharply. Those of you who need help in math, crazy science, botany, or any other glorified torture methods passed off as core subjects, stand up. There was an awkward pause. A few students hesitated. Now, she repeated, sharper. One by one, Hands went up. Students rose. Wednesday quickly assessed the group and began assigning them to different tables around the library. You, Calculus. Table 1. You 2, Chemistry. Table 2. Botany. Table 3. And if you're here for crazy science, I assume you're referring to Mr. Lint's practical physics class with the exploding toasters. Table 4. As the students moved, she called after them, $5 each. Learning is not a charity. Coins clinked and bills were shoved hastily into a black cash box she kept beside her annotated syllabus. When everyone settled, she began teaching one table at a time, methodically, without haste. She didn't believe in burying students in facts they'd forget after the test. Her method was direct: understand the core, master the rest. At the calculus table, she explained the concept of limits without touching the textbook, sketching a sharp graph on a whiteboard with her usual surgical precision. Memorize formulas and you'll pass the test. Understand why the function behaves the way it does and you'll pass life. At the chemistry table, she handed out diagrams of chemical bonds, pointing out the patterns. Stop guessing. Chemistry is math with flavor. Respect the structure. At botany, she had students describe plant functions in their own words, then corrected them when they got poetic. It doesn't breathe happiness. It exchanges gases. Stick to science, not Disney. The new students, caught off guard by her efficiency and clarity, exchanged looks of stunned admiration. They expected her to be cold, maybe even careless, but she was precise, focused, and frighteningly effective. Meanwhile, the veterans of last semester, Eden, Ajax, Yoko, Xavier, Bianca, and the rest of the Nightshades breezed through their review like they'd been born fluent in midterm survival. When Wednesday checked their practice problems or listened to their explanations, she gave curt nods of approval and moved on. No praise. No nonsense. Just progress. They didn't need their hands held anymore. By the end of the 2-hour session, the newer students were scribbling notes faster than their pens could handle, and more than one asked, wide-eyed, "Wait, why isn't she a teacher?" "Because she has standards," Eden muttered under her breath. Wednesday looked up from a particularly messy diagram and said flatly, "Because unlike your teachers, I don't tolerate mediocrity. And I charge for my time." Chapter 44. When the midterm results were finally released, the halls of Nevermore rang with shocked voices and fluttering exam papers. "No way, an A," one of the new students blurted, staring at their history paper like it might vanish. "I didn't even understand half the rubric when I started this." "I got a B+ in botany," another whispered, wide-eyed. That's passing. That's more than passing." "She didn't even let me use a calculator during tutoring," one muttered. "She made me understand the formulas." A third leaned over to their classmate and said, "I thought she hated us. But maybe she just hates incompetence." Meanwhile, the veterans of Wednesday's sessions, Eden, Ajax, Yoko, Xavier, Bianca, and the rest of the Nightshades, performed exactly as expected. Nearly all scored straight A's. Their consistency spoke for itself. Ajax and Eden high-fived. Yoko grinned and held up her annotated essay, thick with notes in Wednesday's distinct handwriting, firm, unsparing, but precise. Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, the faculty quietly exchanged glances as the results piled in. "Bianca's paper was the cleanest I've seen all semester," said Professor Carter, flipping through his grading tablet. "No rambling, no filler. Just sharp arguments." "Same with Ajax," muttered Professor Nguyen. "Cited sources properly. Even phrased his thesis like a real scholar." Someone else sighed and added, "She may be insufferable, but damn it, she's effective." "Addams may lack warmth," Miss Thornhill said, setting down her tea, "but she has a surgical understanding of academic standards." Principal Weems tapped her fingers together, half smiling. "Let her have her victories. We'll need her again next semester." But the only one who wasn't celebrating was Wednesday. As soon as her last tutoring session ended and the papers were returned, she walked out of Nevermore and headed straight for the weather vane. Tyler was already there, leaning against the counter with his apron still on and a stack of papers under one arm. He slid into the booth across from her. He placed his results in front of her like a gift. "All A's," he said. "Even my Spanish teacher told me I'm retaining structure. You know how impossible that is." She gave the papers a glance, then stared at her untouched coffee. "You should be proud," he said. "I'm never proud," she muttered, just slightly less disappointed. He nudged her ankle under the table. "You still owe me a reward." She narrowed her eyes. "Survival is your reward. Then you won't mind coming with me to the Harvest Festival next weekend. Bonfires, cider, and shallow people pretending to be thankful for corn." She didn't answer right away. But she didn't say no either. The bell over the weathervane's door chimed. Sheriff Donovan Galpin stepped inside, brushing raindrops from his shoulders. His eyes scanned the booth and landed on his son. Tyler perked up. "Dad, you're not gonna believe this. Straight A's. Spanish, calc, even chemistry." Donovan's gaze flicked to the stack of papers, then lingered on Wednesday. He gave her a single nod, unreadable. "I'm heading back to the station," he said. "We've got 2 new missing persons. Local hikers. Left town last weekend. Never came back." The air shifted. Wednesday's grip on her coffee mug tightened. Tyler sat up straighter. "Wait, missing since when?" "Reported Monday. But we just confirmed both were officially off-grid this morning." Without another word, Donovan turned and left the cafe. As soon as the door shut behind him, Tyler's body tensed. A subtle twitch in his jaw. His hands curled against the edge of the table. Then his eyes darkened. The hide surfaced. "I didn't hunt," he snapped. "Not since Thursday. I've been here. With you." Wednesday observed him coolly. "Then that confirms what I feared." She leaned back, her tone calm and surgical. "He's either getting smarter or more desperate." The hide's brow furrowed. "So what now?" "I think he figured out it's far more time efficient to do it himself," Wednesday said. "Why wait for the hide to go hunting when he can kill and dispose of the bodies with his own 2 hands? She sipped her coffee, almost admiringly. "I underestimated him. Had he stuck with his usual pattern leaving you to clean up after his messes, we'd have caught him already." Tyler blinked, unnerved. "You sound impressed." "I am," she admitted. "Changing one's modus operandi under pressure takes a sharp mind." "He's adapting. Learning. That makes him dangerous, but also worth studying." The hide stared at her, disturbed but intrigued. "You sound like you admire him." "I respect his evolution," Wednesday corrected, eyes narrowing slightly. "But I plan to end him all the same." Tyler, now back in control, swallowed hard. "How?" "We start with those files. Get me names, timestamps, last known locations. Anything Donovan won't hand me, you will." Tyler nodded. "And if we're already too late?" Wednesday stood. Her black coat caught the faint light from the window, casting a long shadow behind her. "Then we sharpen our claws and move faster," she said. "A predator that learns to shed its old skin is only a threat if you let it stay ahead." Tyler, or rather, the hide, walked to the sheriff's station under cover of dusk. Every step was calculated, deliberate. He hung back in the shadows behind the trees lining the parking lot, waiting. Finally, his father's truck pulled out, tail lights vanishing down the road. Without hesitation, Tyler rounded the station and headed for the rear entrance. The janitor's key code hadn't changed. The hallways inside were familiar terrain. He could map them in his sleep. He crept silently past the bullpen and reached the sheriff's office. He glanced over his shoulder, then reached into his jacket. Thing. Wednesday's disembodied hand slipped out with practiced ease. The pale fingers twitched in anticipation and then crawled over to the file cabinets. Tyler whispered, "Bottom drawer, left side." Thing gave a sharp nod and got to work. Together, they rifled through missing persons reports until they found the 2 new files. Normally, Tyler would have used his phone to scan or snap photos, fast, quiet, minimal trace. But Wednesday had it. She insisted on keeping his phone in the car. His father had forced him to install a tracking app months ago, and now that the town was on edge again, it wasn't worth the risk. No digital trail. So instead, Tyler headed to the supply closet and photocopied the reports the old-fashioned way. It took longer. Every second stretched, tense and coiled. Thing tapped impatiently on the counter as the machine slowly spat out pages. They filed the originals back perfectly, returned every folder, and slipped out the way they came. Outside, Wednesday waited in the car, tapping her nails on Tyler's phone screen. "This is why I detest technology," she muttered. "People think it gives you freedom, but really, it just makes you easier to track." She'd won the phone, but the hide had won the argument. He'd insisted on going in himself, claiming he could move unseen, just another kid checking in on his dad. No questions asked. If she had gone, the excuse about her stolen journal was so overused that even the new interns would have raised an eyebrow. She glanced up as Tyler slid back into the passenger seat and handed her the copies. Thing leapt in after him, landing on the dashboard and making a show of dusting itself off. "Got 'em," Tyler said. "But if anyone catches us with these, it'll raise a red flag," she finished. Obviously. She thumbed through the papers, eyes scanning quickly. The dates, the missing names, the locations. Then she added, "Come on. I have a place to hide these where no one will think to look." They drove back to Nevermore in silence, but both knew the hunt was shifting. Wednesday led Tyler through the trees until they reached the old beekeeping shack. She glanced over her shoulder once before pushing open the creaky wooden door. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the faint scent of wax and smoke. She knelt near the far corner, pried up a loose floorboard, and revealed a hidden hatch beneath it. She grunted, then lifted the wooden door with effort, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "After you," she said dryly. Tyler raised a brow. "What is this place?" "The foundation of an old hall," Wednesday replied, lighting an oil lantern. "This used to be a cellar for Nevermore's original gatekeeper before the current structure was ever finished." "Gatekeeper?" Tyler stepped down carefully. "Was that after we came left?" "Yes," she replied. "Probably." Once they were both below, Tyler looked around the space, eyebrows raised. "Okay, how the hell did you find this place?" She gave a smug tilt of her head. "Simple. The floorboards in that corner always sounded different when I walked on them. Hollow. It irritated me until I investigated." Tyler took a slow turn, taking it all in. There were shelves on the stone walls, a small table, a couple of chairs, and even what looked like an old, dust-covered trunk. "There's a tunnel too," he said, pointing to a narrow, bricked archway near the back. Wednesday nodded. "I haven't had time to map it out, but it likely leads somewhere beneath the school, either the dining hall or the rotunda. I'm not sure yet, but I'm certain it leads into Nevermore." She placed the files on the table and began sorting through the photocopied pages, the flickering lantern casting long shadows across her face. After a few minutes, she murmured, "The necromentia is changing methods." "You think he's disposing of the bodies differently?" Tyler asked, folding his arms. "Yes. If he's not using you anymore to dispose of the evidence, it means he's taking care of it himself, faster, more direct, and less traceable. He's either burying the victims in the woods or dumping them in the river." She tapped one of the maps she'd pinned with a rusty nail. "So now what?" "We find the hideout," she said firmly. "He's not dragging bodies far. He needs proximity. That means the woods." Tyler leaned against the stone wall, watching her. "You really think it's that simple?" Wednesday didn't look up. "No. I think it's going to be difficult, violent, and possibly illegal. But at least we're ahead of him again." As Wednesday gripped the iron rungs of the ladder to climb out of the cellar, her body locked in place. Her pupils dilated. The world went silent. The vision struck like a blade. A riverbank. Twilight. The trees loomed like sentinels, their bare branches creaking in the wind. Along the muddy edge, something pale bobbed between the rocks, trapped by roots. A coarse burlap potato sack, waterlogged and half-submerged, floated gently. The top was tied shut with a butcher's knot. Stains, dark and spreading, leaked through the sack's fibers. Then, slowly, the current rolled it and a human hand slipped out from the slit near the seam. Blue, bloated, fingers curled unnaturally. The sack was heavy. There was a shape. A body inside. Wednesday snapped back into her body, hand clenched tight on the ladder rung. She staggered. Tyler caught her elbow. "What is it?" "A body," she said, eyes locked on something distant only she could see. "Found near the riverbank, stuffed in a sack." "Potato sack." Hands sticking out. Tyler glanced out the cellar hatch. "It's already getting dark. We'll barely see anything." His voice shifted, suddenly darker. The hide surfaced, alert, amused, intense. "I'll meet you there later," he said. "After dinner. We'll need lanterns, gloves, rope, and I have to stash my car and leave the phone at home." She scowled. "I'll go alone." He stepped forward, voice low, sharp-edged. "You go alone, and you'll spend half the night guessing where the sack washed up. I go with you, we find it faster. You know I'm right." She hated that she couldn't argue. "Fine," she muttered. "But I'm not thanking you." He grinned. "Didn't ask. And afterward, we're going skinny dipping." She gave him a death glare. Later that night, moonlight rippled over the river's black surface. The air smelled of moss and earth. Wednesday stood at the edge, arms folded. Her bathing suit looked like a Victorian-era sailor outfit, black, long-sleeved, trimmed with white piping. She didn't look ready for a swim. She looked like she'd wandered out of a haunted naval academy. The hide appeared moments later, barefoot, shirtless, eyes glinting in the dark. He'd left Tyler's clothes behind to avoid damaging them. His body twisted. Bones cracked. Limbs lengthened grotesquely. Skin tore open to reveal sinew and fur, a slate-gray pelt crawling over muscle. His face stretched into a snout, fangs jutting forward. His shoulders hunched. His claws gleamed, cruel and curved. The hide stood massive, coiled with energy, like a predator too smart for its own good. His eyes, gold and feral, burned like molten coins. He dropped to all fours, then bounded along the riverbank, sniffing furiously. Wednesday followed with careful precision, her boots sloshing in the mud. The hide suddenly froze, sniffed, tensed. Then, in one motion, he scooped Wednesday up and leapt into the river. She cursed under her breath as cold water rushed around her limbs. When they surfaced, Tyler had returned, water dripping from his hair. "You're impossible," she muttered. "You're wet," he replied, grinning. "Now we match." "The full moon's bright," he added. "Told you. No flashlight needed." They began searching the bank again, waiting, quiet, focused. Just as Wednesday reached for something floating in the reeds, distant voices cracked through the quiet. "Flashlights." Tyler's eyes widened. "People are coming." She turned. Donovan Galpin was furious. The beam of his flashlight cut through the river mist like a sword. He stormed down the slope toward the shoreline, voice sharp. "Tyler, what the hell are you doing out here?" The glare of the flashlight swung over to Wednesday, who stood calmly in waist-high water beside his son, drenched, composed, utterly unfazed. Before either of them could answer, the flashlight caught something floated beneath them. A shape. A sack. Donovan's tone dropped, suddenly grave. "What is that?" Wednesday saw it too. She dove. The river swallowed her whole in an instant, the surface trembling behind her. Down below, her hands grasped the coarse, slime-slick fabric of a potato sack, its top cinched shut, the bottom snagged on something jagged. She worked quickly, fingers untangling algae and knots. When she yanked it free, the sack floated upward, rolling gently like seaweed before it broke the surface. Donovan and one of the officers ran toward it. Tyler took his chance. With everyone's attention locked on the floating sack, he swam quietly to the opposite bank, toward the small dock where he'd left his clothes. He pulled himself up, teeth chattering from the cold, and quickly got dressed. No one noticed. Not yet. Back by the riverbank, Wednesday emerged from the water beside the sack. The officers had already dragged it to shore. Donovan leaned over it, his face grim. One officer gagged and turned away. Wednesday didn't flinch. She stepped closer, dripping, silent, peering over the sack's loose top. Inside was the body of one of the missing persons. Pale, bloated, skin tinged blue from river rot. A young man, no older than 20. The smell was awful. One officer cursed and stepped back, covering his nose. Donovan staggered up, his face pale. Jesus Christ. But Wednesday was still staring, her eyes narrowed. Look at that, she said calmly. This guy's been opened up. The officers paused. One reluctantly leaned in. Donovan looked away, jaw clenched. All right, pack it up, he ordered. Get this body to the coroner. Establish a perimeter now. I want floodlights, tape, and guards here until sunrise. He spun toward Tyler, now fully dressed and trying to blend in with the trees. You. Home. Now. Then to Wednesday, who hadn't moved an inch from the body. And you. Back to Nevermore. She opened her mouth, but he cut her off. I'm not asking. Go. Wednesday stared at him, just long enough to make it uncomfortable before stepping back. Tyler passed her a towel when she caught up to him. Neither of them spoke until they were far from the sheriff's men and their flashing lights. Chapter 45. The next day, Donovan Galpin was still seething. He stood across the counter from his son, arms crossed, while Tyler worked silently behind the bar at the Weathervane. The tension hung thick in the air, like steam from the espresso machine. What were you thinking? Swimming in the river at night? With her. Tyler kept his head down, scrubbing a coffee mug like it held the answers to life. There was a body in the water, Dad. Donovan ignored the remark. You could have gotten hurt. Or worse. And skinny dipping? What the hell were you even thinking? Still no reply. You don't get to ignore protocol just because you're dating Wednesday Addams. Since when is going for a swim on a Friday night a crime? The voice came from behind Donovan. He turned around slowly to find Wednesday standing there, deadpan as ever, hands clasped neatly behind her back. And as far as I'm aware, she continued, stepping forward, societal norms dictate that one should have plans on Friday nights. It's practically a rule. Donovan blinked at her. This isn't about social norms. You don't belong in a police investigation. Then perhaps I should just stick to asking about my stolen journal again, Wednesday replied with a sweet, venom-laced smile. Has it turned up yet, Sheriff? Donovan snapped. Drop it. You're not involved in this case, and you won't be. Let the professionals do their job. Tyler set the mug down and stepped in. Again. Dad, he said firmly. We weren't just messing around. Wednesday dove in and helped pull that sack up. We would have never known someone was down there otherwise. He paused, then added, the guy was missing a foot. That wasn't exactly something we could ignore. Donovan rubbed a hand over his face. Next time, he said, exasperated, ask for permission. Or better yet, stay out of it altogether. Tyler sighed. Can we at least go to the Harvest Festival next weekend? Just putting in the request early. Donovan narrowed his eyes. I've half a mind to ground you. Is this about him having a personal life? Wednesday interjected calmly, or is it just the fact that he's sharing it with me? Donovan stiffened. You know what, she continued, voice lighter now. Maybe I'll go pay the mayor a little visit. It's been a while since I pestered someone about my missing journal. And considering there's still a missing person out there, she trailed off, tone pointed. She's joking, Dad, Tyler said quickly, holding out Wednesday's quad-shot espresso. She took it, nodding in thanks. Donovan glared between the two of them, then sighed. Fine. You can go to the festival. How generous, Wednesday said flatly. Donovan was already walking away, muttering something under his breath about teenagers and cryptic goth girls. As soon as he was out of earshot, Tyler turned to her. You really can't help yourself, can you? He was asking for it, she replied, sipping her coffee. News traveled fast. Too fast. By the end of the week, the halls of Nevermore were still humming with whispers about Wednesday Addams and Tyler Galpin's late-night swim. What started as a passing rumor had bloated into a mythos all its own, complete with wild embellishments about glowing moonlight, forbidden love, and skinny dipping near a murder scene. The new students, especially those who had only just arrived for the fall semester, were the most thrown. Wait, Wednesday Addams has a boyfriend? One of them blurted during lunch, still wide-eyed even days after the news broke. No offense, but she doesn't exactly scream cuddly. There were nods of agreement and the occasional nervous glance down the hall, as if simply saying her name too many times might summon her. One girl whispered, I thought she was, like, dating her cello or something. The older students were used to it. Ajax, Bianca, Yoko, Xavier, they had known for months. But that didn't stop the drama from escalating. Bianca, for one, was appalled. She leaned against her locker, arms crossed. She's still with him, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. How does she keep a relationship longer than me? Yoko shrugged. Maybe it's the dead-inside appeal. Xavier and I broke up 2 months ago, Bianca added, casting a sideways glance across the quad. And somehow she's still in a relationship with feelings? It was a mystery that even the school's psychics refused to touch. Enid, of course, was loving every minute of it. She bounced into Wednesday's path in the quad and all but exploded with glee. Okay, spill. All of it. Except the part with the dead body and the sheriff. I'm preserving the vibe, okay? There was no vibe, Wednesday said without even looking up from the book she was holding. Don't lie to me. You two were out there in the river at night. Under a full moon. That's literally out of a romance novel. Enid leaned in closer, voice low and scandalous. And you were skinny dipping? Wednesday didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her lack of denial was more incriminating than any confession. Enid squealed. Ugh, I hate you. Do you know how hard it is to find someone even halfway decent here? You're like emotionally defunct, but somehow still have a boyfriend and a mystery corpse in the mix. I prefer to think of myself as emotionally streamlined. That's not better, Enid said, shaking her head in mock despair. Anyway, tell me you're going to the Harvest Festival together. Please. I need a win. Yes. Enid froze. Seriously? You're going? Like, voluntarily? Tyler asked. Said it was a reward for getting straight A's on his midterms. Enid clutched her chest like she'd been shot. You're giving him dates as prizes now? You're in a committed relationship. Oh my God. It's conditional, Wednesday replied coolly. Pending no additional homicide discoveries that night. Romance is alive after all, Enid said with a grin. Just not in the way I expected. As the bus pulled up to the Harvest Festival, Eden bounced beside Wednesday with a gleam in her eyes. Hey, are you joining the Po Cup this year? She asked brightly while stepping off. Wednesday gave her a blank stare. You mean the glorified canoe competition disguised as a tradition? Hard pass. Fair enough, Eden laughed, holding up her hands in surrender. Well, I'll leave you to your date. Not 2 steps later, Xavier appeared, as if summoned by the word itself. Still making waves, huh, Addams, he said, falling into step beside her. Heard you and Galpin turned the river into a crime scene last week. That's new. Wednesday didn't answer. She didn't have to. The sound of Tyler arguing with his father just ahead caught her attention. Donovan stood stiffly beside the game booths, arms crossed, clearly not thrilled to see his son in the company of a black-draped girl from Nevermore. Again. I'll be back before curfew, Tyler insisted. It's not about curfew, Donovan snapped. It's about judgment. You know better than to get involved when. Dad, it's just the festival. Let me live for once. Donovan sighed, heavy and reluctant. Fine. Midnight. Not a minute later. Tyler grinned and turned, except Wednesday could tell it wasn't just Tyler. The hide was out. He tossed a few dollars at the dart game booth, narrowed his eyes, and with deliberate precision, sank 3 darts into 3 perfect bullseyes. The carny barely had time to react before the hide grabbed the giant stuffed panda and turned to Wednesday, handing it to her like a trophy. "For you." He stepped in close, one hand possessively slipping around her waist. His gaze drifted, briefly, to Xavier across the way, smug, sharp, territorial. "Let's go up the Ferris wheel," he said, voice low. "Get a better view of this ridiculous little town, without the crowd." Wednesday narrowed her eyes, but said nothing. She followed him. Once they were inside the Ferris wheel carriage and rising into the sky, her suspicions flared. "Why are you in a bad mood, monster?" she asked coolly. The hide tilted his head, watching the fairgrounds fade beneath them. "What were you and Pretty Boy talking about?" "Just exchanging pleasantries," she replied. "Hand Tyler back the reins." "Why would I do that?" His voice dipped lower, venomous. "You and I both know Cockroach Boy is an inconvenience to us. You call me out when it suits your mystery and shove me away when it doesn't. What are you blabbering about?" He leaned in closer. "Who do you like more, me or Tyler?" "What's the significance of this question?" she countered, tone sharp. The hide's eyes glinted. "Lately, I've been feeling you only want me around because I'm useful. Because I can do things Tyler can't. You put me in the doghouse ever since we got back from 1620s Jericho. You only called me out again because of this new killing spree in town. I've explained this before. You can't control your urges now. That's why I let you out." "I'm tempered," he snapped. "I saw the way you looked at Xavier. You would have tearing him apart if I weren't standing so close." "What are you talking about?" "Who I speak to is none of your business. I want to be let out more." "Monster, if anyone sees you, they'll think you're the one behind the killings." There was a beat of silence. Then he muttered darkly, "We should have just stayed in the past. We could have gotten married. Ruled this town." Wednesday's expression soured. "Disgusting. You know how I feel about that word. And you know how I see you." He leaned in again. "We spent months, maybe even years back there. Surely, by now, you must have figured out who you fell in love with." Wednesday's breath caught. A pause. "Give it to Tyler." "Now." He stared at her a moment longer, then obeyed. Tyler blinked back into clarity. "Hey, are you okay?" He noticed her eyes were distant, pained. Without a word, he crossed the carriage, sat beside her, and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She clutched the stuffed panda tighter, nuzzling silently against him. The Ferris wheel turned slowly behind them, the fair lights flickering below, warm, distant, and temporary. A few days later, the rain returned, soaking the sidewalks and drawing that familiar damp chill into Jericho. Tyler sat across from Dr. Kinbot in her office, the soft ticking of the clock marking the quiet between them. "How are things?" she asked, eyes warm but probing. "School? Work?" Tyler gave a small shrug, the corner of his mouth twitching. "School's good. Midterms went well. Work's the same. And your father?" He paused. "Still busy. Probably more than usual with everything going on. All the missing persons cases, they're starting to pile up." She nodded, thoughtful. "That must weigh on you." Tyler glanced at the floor. "It's been like this for years. I'm used to it." Dr. Kinbot watched him for a moment. "And your mother? Has she been on your mind lately?" "No," he said quickly. "Not really." That was a lie, but he held her gaze anyway. There was a flash of something else in his eyes, unreadable. "I see," she said, writing it down but not pressing. After a short pause, she looked back up. "And Wednesday? I saw the two of you at the festival." "The Ferris wheel." Tyler blinked, then smiled faintly. "Yeah, we had fun. But?" He shifted in his seat. "It's just, sometimes she gets this look in her eyes. Like something just turned. Like I said something wrong. But I didn't. At least I don't think I did." What were you talking about before she changed? Tyler looked down, and when he spoke again, his tone was quieter. A little sharper. A little colder. I don't even know anymore. I try to be there for her. I go along with what she wants. I say yes. But sheesh, he cut himself off, jaw tightening. It's like I'm only wanted when I'm useful. The second I push back, she shuts down. Makes me feel like I'm the problem for even asking. Dr. Kinbot stilled. It was still Tyler speaking, but there was something in the way he said it. The air around him felt heavier now. That sounds like it hurts. He gave a dry laugh. Yeah, well, I've gotten used to it. She keeps things to herself. Controls everything. But when I try to do the same, suddenly I'm distant. Or I'm difficult. She folded her hands. Do you feel like you can't be yourself around her? He met her gaze, slowly. I don't know who she wants me to be anymore. There it was. A truth buried under layers of misdirection. Dr. Kinbot nodded slowly. Would you ever consider having her join one of your sessions? Not to put you on the spot, just a thought. Sometimes it helps to say these things in front of the person who needs to hear them. Tyler tilted his head, watching her carefully. Then he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. If you can get her to agree, he said. Good luck with that. His voice had softened again. Whatever darkness had crept in a moment ago was gone. But Dr. Kinbot was still thinking about it. That subtle change. That flicker. Like she'd been speaking to someone else, or some other side of him. After Tyler left her office, Dr. Kinbot didn't bother pretending to be calm. She locked the door, turned to her desk, and immediately reached for the folder marked Galpin, Tyler with red underlines, a habit she started when things about a patient just didn't sit right. And lately, nothing about Tyler sat right. She'd watched him grow from a quiet, deeply grieving boy into a young man who now seemed to orbit Wednesday Addams like a moon caught in the pull of a dying star. It would have been romantic if it weren't so deeply unsettling. She flipped through his notes. It wasn't just that his relationship with Wednesday had progressed too quickly. It was how he talked about her. How everything always came back to her. How his father, who had always been a source of tension in therapy, now only came up as the villain standing in the way of their romance. His grief for his mother, once a complicated mix of sorrow and shame, had become little more than a footnote compared to how Wednesday helped him feel alive again. No, scratch that. She crossed out alive again in her notes. He acts like he was born the moment she looked at him. That kind of devotion wasn't normal. Not for a teenager. Not that intense. Not that fast. It wasn't love, it was fixation. And it disturbed her. She had raised an eyebrow when she first heard the rumors. Wednesday Addams, the most emotionally repressed girl in Jericho, caught skinny dipping at the river with Tyler after curfew. Public hand-holding. A ride on the Ferris wheel at the Harvest Festival. But today, something deeper gnawed at her. Tyler's tone had darkened when she asked about Wednesday. It wasn't just frustration or hurt. It was possession. He didn't say, we had a fight, or she hurt my feelings. He said things like, she doesn't appreciate me. She only calls on me when she wants something. She pushes me out whenever I don't give her what she wants. It was the kind of language abusers used, only flipped. She doubted he even realized it. But more than anything, she was disturbed by how adult it all sounded. Not mature. Not healthy. Just wrong. They're teenagers, she muttered aloud, pressing the back of her pen to her lips. They're not supposed to talk like this. Think like this. Need each other like this. She opened Wednesday's file, thinner than Tyler's. But more difficult. Much more. Refuses to open up during sessions. Offers no insight, no cooperation. Expresses disinterest in therapy, no visible reaction to standard engagement techniques. Dr. Kinbot tapped the folder against her desk, annoyed. All she had to go by was Tyler. And he made it sound like their entire relationship was a battlefield of power plays, emotional debts, and coded rules of engagement. Not to mention the almost theatrical dynamic. It was obsessive. Intense. Adult. But not in a healthy, emotionally developed way. No, this was more like something out of a gothic romance. Wuthering Heights, she thought. But worse. Note, relationship dynamic is troubling. Extreme codependency. Possible identity enmeshment. Tyler frames Wednesday as both salvation and source of pain. Self-worth appears contingent on her attention. Dangerous imbalance. She leaned back in her chair and sighed, staring at the ceiling. If I didn't know better, she whispered, I'd say they're play-acting something they've seen in books or movies. Only, they believe it. And she couldn't shake the thought that if one of them ever tried to walk away, the other might not let them. She made a note in the file and underlined it twice. Recommend. Couples therapy session. Immediate. Urgent. For observation purposes. Not therapeutic trust. Monitor for escalating possessiveness. Watch for psychological triggers. Dr. Kinbot snapped the folder shut. She didn't trust either of them. And worst of all, she was starting to suspect Wednesday wasn't the one she should be afraid for.